Hello and welcome back for another EDH deck tech video. I'll be wrapping up today's allotment of videos with one last list. This is my current Dega Mardu list, currently piloted by Queen Marchesa, or Marchesa, however you pronounce her name. This is an interesting commander that actually answered an issue I was running into with some previous Dega lists. If you're a fan of my channel, you know I don't play white or green very often. This is the current deck retaining my white cards. Previously, it was Licia, and then it became a Mathas deck, and that's when I was running into the issue, and I found the answer being Queen. Now, I will actually show, since these changes have happened within the past month, I have all the tech for both of these commanders. At the end of the video, I will show the extra cards that went with them or comment on them if they're still in the deck. Now, Queen Marchesa, she is a 4-mana 3/3 Death Touch Haste. Again, if you're familiar with my channel, you know I have a passion for evasive or haste 4-drop commanders because there's such a plethora of 2-mana costing artifacts like Signets and Diamonds and Fellwarstone that you can do on turn 2. So you have a turn 3 commander. That's something I typically like when it comes to swords and equipment and Voltron-style commanders, and that's exactly what this deck does. Again, the reason for that is 4 mana for a turn 3 commander means on turn 4, the following turn, if you have a land drop, then you have the appropriate mana for casting and equipping a Sword of X and Y, like Sword of Feast and Famine. That makes for a very good start, and while that's not always the best in multiplayer, it's kind of the best you can do for Voltron. That's also not including possible broken starts if you have a Soul Ring, Mana Crypt, whatever. Now, Queen here, she is a 4-mana 3/3 Death Touch Haste. She gives us the Monarchy. That is the issue I was running into. Dega is a tight caller. You want to play all the best cards you can, and when it comes to themes, this deck has a theme, unfortunately, you start having to cut cards in corners. My theme cut, or it was hurting, was actually card advantage and card draw, and the Monarchy actually was a good answer to that. Now, there are other ways you can take this. You can do Monarchy-themed cards. You can also capitalize on giving away the Monarchy. You can give your opponents the Monarchy or have them take it, so you can start doing stupid stuff with Skull Clamp or Token Fodder, Sacrifice, and whatnot. And, of course, as the Monarchy, I do have a ghetto-ass crown I require anyone who's the Monarchy to wear, just so it's funny. Now, again, as I said, this is a thematic deck. You will find out the theme very quickly here. Let's go through the creatures. Now we have Mathas, and these are in mana cost order. And Mathas was, again, the commander when this was strictly a combat, like I wanted to equip creature deck. He was clever because you could do stuff like Lotus Petal or Jeweled Amulet as additions to get him on turn 2 as a quicker creature. Sometimes I was even considering Simian Spirit Guide. I'll show more of those cards as we at the end of this current list, though. Next creature, we have Tymna. This is a remnant of Licia. The Licia route I had, again, more cards will be at the end, was a lifelink-based deck. Instead of having triggers of lifelink off of generic permanents, it was a combat-based deck where the majority of the creatures had lifelink, and that thus made Licia cheaper. That wasn't a good idea. It was interesting, but it was a very battle cruiser-ish slow deck. Tymna is still a good card. The lifelink is helpful, but with equipment on her, we can end up eventually hitting somebody and then drawing a card off of that. Thalia is fantastic for first strike, and the non-basic hate is always fantastic as well. And Kalitas, again, left over from Licia. A lot of lifelink, very good hate on the graveyard as well. We have Gonti. Death Touch on equipment is always good. It's nice to ward people off, and he can usually get it through. He's actually a very strong commander, and it's always fun to see random ninjutsu nonsense with him as well. We have Olivia. If I were not playing white, this would be the ideal commander for this deck. A very strong controlling commander that can come out in turn 3 and attack in the air. We have Miri the Cursed, one of my favorite commanders when it comes to swords. Same formula of a 4-drop haste that you could try to get on turn 3, follow up, turn Equipper up, and keep attacking. We have Sidisi, a nice little tutor. The Death Touch is fantastic. Sometimes you want to keep around. And of course, we can exploit the tokens we get from Queen Marchesa. We have Urabrask. We have the nice haste and the anti-haste for the opponents. Vona, a nice vigilance lifelinker, very good with Licia. Like he can come out pretty early and hit once, even if they kill him or whatnot. But still, that vigilance and lifelink is fantastic. The tap ability is good, and he is an interesting commander, but I don't think he's powerful enough as a commander. We have Archangel Avacyn as a nice flash protection. Godo to go get whatever equipment we want out of the deck and put into play. Vigilance equipment on Godo or with Godo and Aurelia means that we have extra combat steps as well, which is always fantastic. And the last creature in the deck is Avacyn. There is an Armageddon in this deck. There's also a Boros Charm in the deck. So Boros Charm and Avacyn give our things indestructible, so if we Armageddon, we don't lose our lands. Some people find that rude. This is a Mardu deck that doesn't have any kind of broken combos or synergies, so that's kind of just what the deck can do. Now, if you haven't noticed that theme yet, I'll go ahead and point out the obvious. This stack here is the spells, the two most important spells. Well, most important spells coming up. We have Urza's Ruinous Blast, a legendary sorcery. Obviously, we have to have a legendary permanent or we can't cast it. Permanent being a planeswalker creature. But next to that, we also have Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. Every creature in the deck and a fair number of permanents coming up are all legendary. This is not a focused theme for the deck. This just happens to be what I'm playing with currently. I may revert back to a previous theme, but I'm going to explore this a bit deeper. Thinking-wise, this could actually be an interesting color combination for focusing on Primeval's Glorious Rebirth. We could plug things like Faithless Looting, Cathartic Reunion, Entomb, Buried Alive, all the fun stuff to just fill the graveyard with all the broken legendary permanents, and then cast this. Alternatively, there is the spell that reverses your deck and your graveyard. I think it's like a 7 mana or 9 mana, whatever, from like Torment. And then you can give this flashback from like a recoup or something like that, and just pull all the legendaries back that way. That is a route I was considering, but that felt more like a combo, and this is more of a good stuff Voltron-y attack deck. That's just an idea. But going on through the spells, we have a Tutor in Demonic and Enlightened Tutor. There were other tutors in the deck, like Steel Shaper's Gift and Vamp Toot. I would have a Vamp Toot in here, but I needed it for a different deck. We have Yogg-Will for Recursion, and a fair number of white and red instances. Hint, there's a Sunforger package in here. And the Sunforger package used to be a lot more in depth, and I will show the extra spells with the Mathas package. So we have the Disenchant and the Bolts and the Boros Charm. Again, Indestructible was the important part here to protect our stuff if we Armageddoned. The Double Strike, although, is also used frequently to just kill somebody with combat damage. Rakdos Charm for a bit of anti-combo if people try to make Kiki, Infinite whatnots, or anti-artifact or graveyard hate. We have the Terminates and the Anguished Unmakings and the Crackling Doom and the Utter End. Now, this is a sorcery, so you cannot get this with the Sunforger, but Vindicate still is one of the reasons you play white and black together. We have 3 Wraths and Day, Wrath, and Damnation. I do need a Toxic Deluge for the deck. I would recommend that if you're interested here. And an Armageddon for lands, because we have the Boros Charm and the Avacyn. This is, again, considered a rude card. Not all people like this kind of thing, because this is a very slowed down battlecruiser, turn 20-plus-ish deck, whatever. This is kind of what we do. Now, we also have 2 other permanents, the Aura Silence and the Land Tax. Aura Silence is one of my absolute favorite reasons to play white. There is obviously not a Sun Titan in the deck currently. If I were to revert away from Legendary, Sun Titan plus Aura Silence is a very obnoxious setup. But let's go on to the stack of artifacts. Now, as you expect, there are some legendary artifacts. We have quite a few. This was not in the Licia deck because all the creatures in the Licia deck already had lifelink, but it is a legendary permanent that we can recur in this deck. We have the Spear of Heliod. It makes her tokens, not Queen Marchesa's assassin tokens, not as whimsical, and also we can allow someone to attack us and take the monarchy, and we can use this as a removal spell later. It is a very mana expensive card, though. Mortal Sun is a very slow draw, but this is probably not exactly the best for this deck. We have better draw options. Anything like a Faithless Looting, a Sign in Blood would just be better than this for drawing. Making things cheaper is nice. There's actually no Planeswalkers in this deck, which is odd. We have another Legendary in Chroma's Memorial for more combat shenanigans, and a bunch of equipment. All the Legendary equipment that I felt were good, as in Umunozawa's Jitte being ideal. Something like the giant 6-mana sword or Cauldron set are not in here. If you like the idea of an all-legendary all-the-time deck, there are other things you can plug. You can even get things like the gods, like all 3 gods of your color or whatever colors you're running. Legendary Sword of the Animus is probably one of the better equipments. Again, as a Mardu deck, we don't have green for efficient ramp. This is one of the best things we can see. Black Blade for late game, and Godsend for making people not want to block so you can take the monarchy back. We have Tenza. We do have a red commander, so this ends up making Marchesa a 6/6 trample, death, touch, haste. Death, touch, and trample together is a fantastic interaction. And finally, we have Hammer and Zahan as another legendary. Comes auto-equipped, and future equipment also plug in, giving something indestructible. The non-legendary permanents, we do have quite a few of those, unfortunately. We have the 5 Swords of X and Y for all sorts of various protection, the 3 most important being on top, followed by some various other ones just to complete the package. And then we have Sunforger. Now, Sunforger may end up coming out of the deck if I choose to focus on legendary nonsense more. This just happens to be a very good utility card. Again, Mardu sometimes, as a Voltron deck and being Mardu, our card advantage sections are a little bit rough. So having a toolbox like this is fantastic. And I basically need to reiterate how this works. Yeah, you could go ahead and just immediately cast it for 3, equip it for 3, and pay 2 to unattach it and do something in your deck. But this is something you can do at any time you want. So you typically want to try to wait until someone interacts with you. Someone tries to blow up your things, go get a Boros Charm and make it indestructible. If someone tries to kill a creature or attack you with lethal, then go get something like Comeuppance, which is a fog, or a removal spell. You can even get a Mana Tithe if you want to try to counter and be cute. Sunforger is a very interesting card, and it allows for a very controlling strategy if you can make it stick. And we have some other artifacts and expedition map. There is a Cabal Coffers in this deck to go with an Urboard. That is Remnant of Licia. It is still in the deck because a lot of my permanents are very expensive to cast. It is no longer a Cabal Coffers focus deck, but it's there. Now we have 11 ramp spells, 10 of which can help get Queen out on turn 3. Wayfarer's Bauble is not a artifact rock, but it helps fix our lands. We have a Mox Amber. This does not help get Queen out on turn 3, but it is a legendary permanent, and since the goal is to always have a turn 3 Queen, this is essentially an extra landfall. We have the Mana Crypt and the Soul Ring. For the broke starts, we have the Felwar Stone, and my favorites being the 3 diamonds and the 3 signets. So 10 rocks that can help get her out on turn 3 if possible, and a Mox Amber. Finally, we have lands. There are 37 lands in the deck, one of which does not initially tap for mana, Cabal Coffers, so I would actually say this deck has 36 lands and a Cabal Coffers. Again, this is not actually necessary for the deck. This probably actually needs to become something like a Mana Confluence. The biggest and most expensive card in the deck is the Avacyn, which is like multiple white mana symbols, so this doesn't actually help reduce that. Then we have the Urboard go with it. And City of Ass to give us any color we want, along with a Reflecting Pool and the Command Tower. Now we have some legendary lands. Again, if you like the idea of a legendary focused deck, there's a lot more legendary lands you can get. You can get there's the one from Kamigawa that when it dies you get a spirit. There's the one that you can make each player draw a card. There's the Gyre Reach Sanatorium where each player draws and discards a card. There's a number of legendary lands. There's the 3 that are good for combat. And then there's this one because I am playing Armageddon, and sometimes my spells may not resolve, so it's nice to get ahead. We have the 3 on-color fetches because I am very vain about my decks, and the 3 shocks. Come on. And the 3 filters. Filters are fantastic because all of my lands produce color, so they are good at fixing and getting Queen out when we need to. We have the 3 pains. These may be considered upgradable. Then we have snow-covered lands because I have a reservoir of these. We have 6 of the swamps. Come here. 6 plains and 4 mountains in here. Yeah, that is my current Queen Marchesa build. This is kind of an experiment. We are playing with Legendaries Matter, and I may evolve it to be more of a filtering effect where we have things like Faithless Looting, Cathartic Reunion, Reforge the Soul, Wheel of Fortune, Buried Alives, things like that to fill the graveyard and focus on the Primeval Rebirth. Because the fact that thing returns lands is important because you're essentially accelerating in colors that don't normally do that by filling your graveyard. There's about 8 lands you can pull back that are legendary. There's other legendary equipment, other legendary artifacts and creatures. That's just a fantastic idea. Now let's go through real quick. Let me get Mathas back here. We'll start with what the deck used to be last. Mathas was the previous commander before I chose to go with Marchesa. It was still a heavy creature and combat-based deck with equipment, but it had different creatures. These are more like not legendary matters creatures, but more like creatures that are good to have equipment on them in these colors. So if you have any interest in like a combat strategy matters deck, try Mathas. You can get faster acceleration, something like a Lotus Petal or Simian Spirit Guide or a Jeweled Amulet. Jeweled Amulet is a 0 mana artifact. You pay 1 and tap it and put a charge counter on it. And on the next turn you can untap, you tap it and take the charge counter off for any mana. It's essentially think of it as a Coalition Relics, half of Coalition Relics ability. So you can turn to a 3-drop commander. But the rest of these are ideal creatures to put equipment on. Twilight Prophet was also in Licia. We have the package of Stoneforge Mystic and Stonehewer. Stoneforge Mystic and the Sun Titan may end up back in Marchesa deck because those are just fantastic cards. Seize the Day also, if I take the Sunforger out of Marchesa deck, this will definitely be going back into it. The issue with Seize the Day is the Pro Red. Painful Truths, there is a selection of other cards similar to this, like Sign in Bloods and Night's Whisper. This is something I was having to run because I was having issues with card draw. Again, Painful Truths is the best. It may go back in. 3 mana, 3 cards is a pretty good deal. Merciless Eviction was in there as a previous board wipe before I put the Urza's Ruinous Blast. And Torment of Hailfire was a replacement for Exsanguinate, which was the reason we had a Cabal Coffers in the deck. Exsanguinate was for Licia. Torment was for Mathas. Nothing is for Queen. Now, these are other things that were in here for the Sunforger. Sunforger used to have a package of up to 14 targets in my deck. So all of these basically were just good for it. Now, this hits a creature or Putrefy hits artifact. I think this hits a creature or enchantment. This exiles a creature. This, unfortunately, you cannot fuse when you Sunforger. You can only fuse from hand. But when you Sunforger, you get either or. Like, you can't choose both. Comeuppance is a funny fog. This is a good Sunforger target. Something like this and Deflecting Palm are very good if your meta is full of combat-based decks. Lightning Helix, again, is generic, and Steel Shaper's Gift was here to get more equipment that was in the deck, like the Pro for your legendaries and some boots and boots. The issue with running Lightning Greaves in an equipment-based deck is you can't rearrange your equipment if you don't have another creature. Let's go on through Licia real quick. Again, this was the original Mardu deck when I first split apart my 5-color deck. I tried her. The idea behind this, originally I wanted to make it into a combo engine where there was enchantments that say when a creature comes into play, there's permanents like creatures and enchantments and whatnot that do this. When a creature comes into play or whatever, you gain life per its power or toughness. And this is an ability, while you can only do it on your turn, you can do it at instant speed. So you could say this comes into play and you gain 7 life. And then she would be 7 mana and less. What I was attempting to do was to make a combo that evolved around sacrificing her and recasting her over and over and over again, gaining the life back all the time because I would net the life gain every time I cast her. Now, while that is a plausible combo, the parts required were too excessive. The main issue being that she was 3 colors up here. If, for example, she was like 5 mana and a black with a red-white ability or something like that, and I could use Phyrexian Altar, then that is a realistic combo that could be or have potential. The alternative, the other way they could have made this not garbage, would be instead of making her 8 mana with this ability, make her a 3 mana like red, white, black as a 1/1 with this ability. The whole 5 mana ability on here, even with the life reduction, it's very hard to make this work. And I tried a few different things. The thing that ended up best for me was a creature-based attack deck where all of the creatures had lifelink. Because what she's going to end up doing anyways is turning sideways and attacking. The rest of the deck might as well complement that. And you can, of course, do that really well with Sarah's Ascendant. Vampire Nighthawk with swords or anything is actually just a fantastic way of reducing her. Angel of Throne and Divinity of Pride, fantastic lifelinkers. Even Disciple of Bolus, gaining life, was good. We had another lifelinker and protection of stuff. Fumigate, destroying all creatures and gaining like 4 or 5 life, is a very good way of reducing her cost. Exsanguinate, while excessive in life gain, is another way of getting her down. And of course, Batterskull, an equipment that went with the theme of the deck. While we didn't need to give all our creatures lifelink, this was an equipment that could attack and give vigilance. But yeah, Licia, this was an interesting card, and if some new tech comes out, or if I'm unrealized to something, that you can work with her mana cost by sacking. Maybe if there's more than just Phyrexian Altar to make colors by stacking her and looping her with the life gain over and over again. I'm sure you can turn this into some kind of Perforos burnout combo. I may revisit that later because I like the idea of what this card is trying to do. But personally, I feel that they held this card back way too much. But yeah, that is my current set of Mardu nonsense. We're currently running Queen, and we'll see where this goes. I may post an updated later. I don't like updating regularly. This will be like, if I show another Queen deck, it'll be like after a month or two after I finalize or figure out what the deck does. But yeah, any ideas or feedback, always welcome. Thanks.